Hello everyone, kindly hit the subscribe button on your screen and let me know where you're watching from. The check sat on the table between us like a loaded gun. $500,000, the price of my silence, the price of my child's existence. I stared at Alina Harrington's perfectly manicured hand as she slid it closer to me, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the afternoon light that streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Hamptons estate. "This should be more than sufficient for you to relocate and start fresh," she said, her voice as crisp as her white linen suit. "Somewhere far away from New York, far away from my son." My throat constricted as I struggled to breathe. Just 6 hours earlier, I had been cleaning the marble bathrooms of this mansion, my secret safely hidden beneath the loose fabric of my uniform. Now I sat across from one of the wealthiest women in America as she attempted to erase me, to erase us, with a single signature. I placed a protective hand over my still flat stomach. "Mrs. Harrington, I didn't come here looking for money." Her practiced smile didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone has a price, Zora, even you. 3 months ago, I wouldn't have been sitting at this table. 3 months ago, I was simply Zora Williams, 26-year-old graduate student working as a part-time housekeeper to pay for my master's degree in social work. 3 months ago, I hadn't yet fallen in love with Alexander Harrington, heir to the Harrington financial empire. And I certainly hadn't planned on carrying his child. "This isn't about money," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Alexander has a right to know." Alina's perfectly composed face hardened. "My son has a future that has been mapped out since before he was born. Harvard Business School, taking over the family firm, marriage to someone from a suitable family." She paused, her gaze traveling over my work uniform, lingering on my hands, rough from cleaning chemicals. "That future does not include the child of a maid." The word maid sliced through me, not graduate student, not woman, maid. In her eyes, that was all I would ever be. "What makes you think Alexander will agree with you?" I challenged, though my heart pounded against my ribs. We'd only been together for 6 months, our relationship a secret stolen in moments between his visits home and my cleaning shifts. But what we had was real, wasn't it? Alina's laugh was like ice cracking. "Oh, my dear, who do you think suggested this arrangement?" The room tilted, my vision blurred at the edges as her words sank in. No, she was lying. Alexander had whispered plans against my skin in the darkness of his childhood bedroom, plans about a future, about someday, about eventually telling his family about us when the timing was right. "I don't believe you," I whispered. Alina's expression softened into something almost like pity. "Call him if you like, but understand this, the Harringtons protect their own. This check is my offer today, it won't be on the table tomorrow." She rose gracefully, signaling our meeting was over. "The baby deserves better than a life of being unwanted by its father and scorned by society. This money ensures you both have a fresh start. Isn't that what a mother would want for her child?" As she walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, I remained frozen, staring at the check with the amount that could change my life, that could give my child opportunities I never had growing up in my struggling neighborhood in the Bronx. But at what cost? My phone felt heavy in my pocket. Alexander hadn't answered my calls since I'd texted him about the pregnancy test 2 days ago. What if Alina was telling the truth? Outside the massive bay windows, I could see the gardener's pruning roses worth more than my monthly salary. Beyond them, the Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly, reminding me how small I was in this world of wealth and privilege that had momentarily let me in and was now showing me the door. I placed my hand on my stomach again and made a silent promise to the life growing inside me. Whatever happened next, whatever choice I made, it would be for us, not for the Harringtons, not for their money, not for their approval. The sun was setting as I left the mansion, the check still on the table, my decision hanging in the balance. What would I do? Take the money and disappear? Fight for Alexander to acknowledge our child? Or forge my own path, refusing both their charity and their scorn? I had until tomorrow to decide. Hello everyone, before I continue, please hit the subscribe button, thank you. The subway rattled beneath me as I headed back to my apartment in the Bronx, Alina's words echoing in my mind. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, illuminating faces lost in their own worlds, none of them carrying the burden I now shouldered. "Who do you think suggested this arrangement?" My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone for the 20th time that day. Still no response from Alexander. I scrolled through our text history, seeking reassurance in the blue bubbles filled with promises and declarations of love. "I've never met anyone like you, Zara," he'd written just 3 weeks ago. "You see the real me, not the Harrington heir." I closed my eyes, remembering the first time we'd spoken. I'd been changing the sheets in one of the guest rooms when he walked in, home unexpectedly from a business trip. "I'm sorry," I'd said, flustered, gathering the linens. "I'll come back later." But instead of dismissing me, he'd smiled, that crooked smile that made his serious face transform. "No rush, I'm Alexander, by the way, not Mr. Harrington Jr. or whatever my mother probably told the staff to call me." "Zora," I'd replied simply, against my better judgment. What had followed was a slow-burning connection that defied the boundaries of our worlds. Conversations about books when I thought no one was watching me organize the library. Debates about social policy when I admitted I was studying social work. Late-night discussions in the kitchen when insomnia drove him downstairs and my evening shift was ending. The subway jerked to a stop, snapping me back to reality. I exited at my station, climbing stairs to the street level where the humid July air clung to my skin. My apartment building loomed ahead, not dilapidated, but certainly not the kind of place a Harrington would ever set foot in. My roommate Aisha looked up from her nursing textbooks when I entered. One glance at my face told her everything. "It didn't go well," she stated, closing her book. I sank onto our second-hand couch. His mother offered me $500,000 to disappear. "Holy shit," Aisha whispered, eyes widening. "What did you say?" I left the check on the table, for now. She moved beside me, her weight creating a familiar depression in the worn cushions. "And Alexander?" I shook my head, tears finally breaking free. "She claims it was his idea, he still won't answer my calls." "Men are trash," Aisha declared, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Even rich ones, especially rich ones." "What if she's lying?" I wiped my eyes. "What if he doesn't know what she's done?" Aisha's expression softened. "Zora, you've always seen the best in people, it's your superpower and your curse." My phone buzzed and my heart leaped, but it was just a notification from my student loan provider. Another payment due. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, turning down enough money to erase my debt and secure my child's future, all on the hope that a man born into billions might actually stand by me. "My grandmother would slap me silly if she knew I left that check behind," I said with a hollow laugh. "Your grandmother would be proud you didn't let anyone buy your dignity," Aisha corrected. "But she'd also want you to be practical." I thought of my grandmother who'd raised me after my parents' death, working 3 jobs to keep us afloat. The woman who drilled into me the importance of education, of standing on my own 2 feet, of never depending on anyone else's charity. But she'd also been practical to her core. $500,000, Aisha, do you know what that could mean for this baby, for me? "I do," her voice was gentle, "but do you know what it would cost you?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. An unknown number, I answered, hard in my throat. "Zara Williams," a man's voice unfamiliar.
Yes.
"This is Julian Reeves, attorney for the Harrington family." My blood turned cold. "How did you get this number?" "Ms. Williams, I'm calling to follow up on Mrs. Harrington's generous offer. She informed me you needed time to consider." I glanced at Aisha, who was watching me intently. "I haven't made a decision." "I understand, however, there are some additional terms we need to discuss. The financial arrangement would, of course, be contingent upon a legally binding non-disclosure agreement and a formal relinquishment of any paternity claims." The clinical way he discussed my child, our child, made my stomach turn. "Mr. Reeves, I need to speak with Alexander directly." A pause. "I'm afraid Mr. Harrington is unavailable. He's authorized me to handle this matter in its entirety." "Then tell Alexander I'm not signing anything until I hear from him directly." The lawyer's tone chilled. "Ms. Williams, I advise against making this situation more complicated than it needs to be. The Harrington's offer is exceedingly generous. Many would consider it life-changing." "It is life-changing," I agreed. "That's why I need to hear from Alexander himself." "Very well, I'll relay your message, but please understand the terms of this offer are time-sensitive. Mrs. Harrington expects your answer by noon tomorrow." The call ended, and I set down my phone with shaking hands. "What are you going to do?" Aisha asked softly. I stared at the cracked ceiling of our apartment, thinking of the mansion by the sea, of Alexander's laugh, of the baby that would never know its father's world unless I fought for it. "I'm going to see him," I decided, standing up, "tonight." "Zara, no. I need to hear it from him, Aisha. I need to look him in the eyes when he tells me he wants me gone." She grabbed my arm. "And what if they call security? What if they have you arrested for trespassing? You think a black woman showing up uninvited at a white billionaire's estate is going to end well?" Her words hit like a slap of reality. She was right, of course. The same security guards who'd nodded respectfully when I arrived in uniform would see me very differently if I appeared after hours, emotional and demanding. My phone buzzed again, a text message this time. "Unknown number, meet me, tomorrow 10 a.m. the boathouse." Followed by, "This is not a discussion, it's a goodbye, bring the paperwork." My hands trembled. Alexander's private number, the one he'd always texted me from, had been disconnected when I tried it earlier. Was this really him, or another of his mother's tactics? There was only one way to find out. "Tomorrow," I whispered to Aisha and to myself, "tomorrow I get my answer." That night I dreamed of water rising, of trying to swim while carrying a precious weight in my arms, of reaching for a hand that kept withdrawing just beyond my grasp. I woke gasping, my hand on my stomach, feeling the first flutter of the life inside me. Whatever happened at the boathouse, I wouldn't be deciding for just myself anymore. Sleep evaded me for the rest of the night. By dawn, I was sitting at our small kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea, watching as the city slowly awakened. In just a few hours, I would face Alexander, and possibly the end of everything I'd foolishly allowed myself to hope for. "You don't have to do this alone," Aisha said, appearing in her scrubs ready for her hospital shift. "I can call in sick." I shook my head. "This is something I need to do myself." After she left, I stood before the bathroom mirror, studying my reflection. I wore a simple blue dress, one Alexander had once complimented, and had pulled my braids back into a neat bun, professional, dignified, the opposite of how I felt inside. The train ride to Southampton stretched my nerves to breaking point. As familiar stations flashed by, I replayed every moment with Alexander, searching for signs I might have missed. Had I imagined the tenderness in his touch, the sincerity in his voice when he'd whispered about our future? "You're different, Zara," he'd said one night as we lay tangled in sheets, the ocean breeze drifting through his open window. "You see past all this." He gestured vaguely to his surroundings, to the wealth that defined his existence. "You make me feel like I could be anyone and you'd still look at me the same way." Had it all been a game to him, a rich boy's fantasy of slumming it with the help? I arrived at the Harrington estate by the service entrance, a habit I couldn't break. Instead of going to the main house, I followed the stone path that wound through manicured gardens toward the shore. The boathouse sat at the end of a long dock, a charming structure of weathered cedar and glass that housed the family's collection of sailboats and water equipment. It was our spot, the place where Alexander had first kissed me during a winter storm, when I'd sought shelter after being caught in the rain while changing the beach house linens. As I approached, I could see a figure through the windows, tall, broad-shouldered, packing. My heart clenched at the familiar silhouette. Alexander turned when I opened the door, his face unreadable. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his normally clean-shaven face showing stubble. Gone was the confident heir to the Harrington fortune. Before me stood a man who appeared as lost as I felt. "Zara," my name sounded like both a prayer and a surrender on his lips. I remained by the door, suddenly afraid to come closer. "Your mother offered me $500,000 to disappear with your child." No preamble, no pleasantries, just the brutal truth hanging between us. He flinched, then nodded slowly. "I know." "Was it your idea?" The question that had tormented me for 24 hours finally escaped. "God, no," he ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Zora, you have to believe me, when you texted me about the pregnancy, I was in shock. I needed time to process. Then my mother somehow found out." "How?" I interrupted. "My assistant, she saw the text when I left my phone on my desk." Alexander's jaw tightened. "She's worked for my family for years. Her loyalty is to my mother, not to me." I wanted to believe him, every fiber of my being ached to trust his words. So you didn't send me that text last night about this being a goodbye? Confusion flickered across his face. What text? I showed him my phone. As he read, his expression darkened. This wasn't me, he said, voice sharp with anger. My mother must have gotten my old phone. I had to change numbers yesterday after he broke off, looking away. After she what, Alexander? He moved to the window, staring out at the ocean. After she threatened to disinherit me if I didn't handle this situation appropriately. His voice was bitter. 3 generations of Harrington wealth and influence, and it could all disappear if I choose you. The words hung heavy in the air. If not when, if. And what did you tell her? I asked, afraid of the answer but needing to hear it. Alexander turned back to me, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I told her she couldn't control me with money, that this was my life, my child. He took a step toward me. Our child. Relief flooded through me, but I held myself in check. Words were easy, actions were what mattered. So what happens now? I asked. Your mother made it clear what she expects. My mother doesn't dictate my life, but even as he said it, uncertainty clouded his features. Doesn't she? I challenged gently. Alexander, your whole life has been mapped out by your family. Harvard because your father went there, the company because it bears your name, even your friends were selected from the right families. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you made a major decision they didn't approve of? His silence was answer enough. I won't be your act of rebellion, I said, my voice breaking, and I won't let our child be a pawn in your family drama. Alexander crossed the room in 3 strides, taking my hands in his. You've never been that to me, Zara, never. His touch was warm, familiar. What we have is real, but this situation is complicated. I pulled my hands away. It's actually very simple. Either you want this child in your life or you don't. Either you're willing to stand up to your family or you aren't. And if I choose you, we lose everything. My inheritance, my position, possibly even my identity. The Harrington name opens doors, Zara. It could give our child opportunities. Our child doesn't need the Harrington name, I cut in. Our child needs a father who values them more than wealth or status. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the window, I could see Billionaire Harrington marching down the dock, the family lawyer trailing behind her. She followed me, Alexander muttered. I should have known. Fear gripped me. I need to go. He grabbed my wrist. No, we face her together. The door burst open and Billionaire stood framed in the entrance, her eyes flashing with cold fury. I see you've chosen to ignore my counsel, she said to Alexander before turning her glacial gaze to me, and you've chosen to be difficult. I lifted my chin. I've chosen to speak directly with the father of my child. Billionaire's laugh was sharp. How quaint. Did you imagine a tearful reunion, a declaration of love, perhaps a proposal? Her voice dripped with condescension. Alexander has responsibilities beyond this, indiscretion. Mother, stop, Alexander's voice held a warning. She continued as if he hadn't spoken. Mr. Reeves has prepared all the necessary paperwork. The terms are non-negotiable, $500,000 in exchange for your silence and your disappearance. You will make no claims of paternity now or in the future. The lawyer stepped forward, holding out a thick folder. I didn't take it. Instead, I looked at Alexander. Is this what you want? All eyes turned to him. In that moment, standing in the boathouse where we'd first discovered each other, Alexander Harrington faced the most significant choice of his privileged life. And I held my breath, waiting to learn if I had ever truly known him at all. The boathouse seemed to shrink around us, the air heavy with unspoken ultimatums. Alexander's gaze darted between his mother and me, a muscle twitching in his jaw. In that suspended moment, I saw his internal struggle written across his face, the weight of generations, of expectation, of privilege warring with something newer and more fragile. This isn't how we're doing this, he finally said, his voice quiet but firm. Mother, I asked you to give me time. Billionaire's perfectly lined lips thinned. Time is a luxury we don't have. The Hamilton merger meeting is next week. The Pearsons' daughter will be at the charity gala on Friday. Your entire future, our family's future, hangs in the balance while you indulge in this distraction. I flinched at the word. Distraction. As if my life, my child, were merely an inconvenient interruption in the Harrington dynasty's carefully orchestrated plans. Zora is not a distraction, Alexander said, moving to stand beside me. And this child is not a problem to be solved with your checkbook. Hope fluttered in my chest like a caged bird. I didn't dare breathe. Don't be naive, Alina snapped. You think this is a fairy tale, the billionaire and the maid? Her eyes raked over me dismissively. You'll be bored in 6 months and she'll be bitter in a year, but by then the damage to your reputation, to our business, will be done. That's enough, Alexander warned, his hand finding mine. Alina's gaze dropped to our intertwined fingers, disgust flashing across her features. You would throw away everything your father built, everything your grandfather sacrificed for, over a momentary infatuation? Not momentary, he replied, and not infatuation. The lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we could discuss this privately as a family. Ms. Williams is carrying my grandchild, Alina interrupted icily. Biologically speaking, she is family, though that's as far as it goes. She turned back to her son. Alexander, be reasonable. We can provide for the child discreetly, a trust fund, the best education, even visitation eventually when things have settled, but this relationship is impossible. Alexander's grip on my hand tightened. I don't accept that. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Alina's composed face. What are you saying? I'm saying no, he stated, each word deliberate. No to your check, no to your conditions, no to pretending my child doesn't exist to make the board members comfortable. My heart soared, but Alina wasn't finished. Then you leave me no choice, her voice was deadly calm. Julian, the papers. The lawyer produced another document from his briefcase. This is a revision to the Harrington Family Trust, effective immediately. It removes Alexander as primary beneficiary and corporate successor if he pursues this relationship. Alexander paled, but his stance didn't waver. You're bluffing, Dad would never agree to this. Your father signed it this morning, Alina countered. He was disappointed but practical. The Harrington legacy is bigger than any one person's indiscretions. I felt Alexander's hand tremble in mine, and my momentary elation crashed back to earth. This wasn't just about money. It was about identity, purpose, his entire sense of self. I'd known Alexander for less than a year, but I understood how deeply his family's expectations were embedded in his psyche. Alexander, I said softly, you don't have to decide right now. This isn't fair to you. He looked down at me, conflict etched in every line of his face. It isn't fair to you either. Alina seized the opening. Listen to her, Alexander. Take time to consider what you're risking, what you're asking her to risk. Her voice softened, becoming almost maternal. A child deserves stability, not controversy, not photographers hounding them, not tabloid speculation about their parentage, not the burden of being the scandal that toppled the Harrington empire. I felt the weight of her words sink into my consciousness. She was manipulative, yes, but not entirely wrong. What kind of life would our child have, caught between these two worlds, always under scrutiny, always having to justify their existence? I need a moment, Alexander said hoarsely, releasing my hand. Alone. He walked to the far end of the boathouse, staring out at the water. Alina remained by the door, the lawyer an uncomfortable shadow beside her. I stood in the middle, physically embodying the position I held in this conflict, caught between worlds, belonging fully to neither. The silence stretched, broken only by the gentle lapping of waves against the dock. Finally, Alexander turned back to us, his expression unreadable. You win, Mother, he said, his voice hollow. I'll sign whatever you want. The floor seemed to drop from beneath me. After everything we'd shared, after his declarations just minutes earlier, how quickly he had folded. Alina didn't smile, didn't gloat, she merely nodded as if the outcome had been inevitable. A wise decision. On one condition, Alexander continued, the settlement to Zora is doubled, 1 million, not 500,000. I gasped. Alexander. It's not enough, he said, unable to meet my eyes. It's nowhere near enough, but it's what I can do right now. Alina considered for a moment, then nodded to the lawyer. Amend the agreement, 1 million with the same confidentiality terms. No, I said, finding my voice, no amount is acceptable. All three looked at me in surprise. Zora, be sensible, Alexander pleaded. This is the best outcome for everyone, especially the baby. The best outcome? I echoed in disbelief. Being paid to disappear, having my child grow up never knowing their father, that's your idea of the best outcome. It's the most practical solution, Alina interjected smoothly. I turned to face her directly. Mrs. Harrington, with all due respect, I don't want your money, I never did. Everyone has a price, she repeated her words from yesterday. Not me, I stated firmly, not for this. I walked to the door, pausing beside her. I came here hoping Alexander would prove you wrong about him. I guess we were both mistaken. Alexander called after me as I stepped onto the dock. Zora, wait, you can't just walk away from this, think about the baby. I turned back one last time. I am thinking about our baby, I'm thinking they deserve a father who fights for them, not someone who can be bought off by his mother. Alina's composed expression finally cracked. You foolish girl, you're throwing away security for pride. No, Mrs. Harrington, I'm choosing dignity over shame. I'd rather my child grow up with nothing but know they weren't a secret to be hidden away. I walked away then, my back straight, tears threatening but not falling. Behind me I could hear Alexander calling my name, his voice growing fainter as I increased my pace. I didn't look back. 4 months passed. My belly grew along with my determination. I finished my master's thesis, landed a job at a community center in the Bronx, and prepared for single motherhood with Aisha's unwavering support. No lawyers called, no checks arrived. The Harringtons had apparently accepted my rejection of their offer. Until one rainy November evening, when a knock came at my apartment door. I opened it to find Alexander standing there, soaking wet, looking nothing like the polished heir I'd known. His designer clothes had been replaced by worn jeans and a simple sweater. His hair was longer, less perfectly styled. But it was his eyes that had changed the most, the entitled confidence replaced by something humbler, more vulnerable. Zora, he said simply. My hand instinctively went to my rounded belly. What are you doing here? I left, he said, all of it, the company, the money, the name. He swallowed hard. I chose us if it's not too late. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind reeling with questions. Had he really walked away from everything? Why now, after months of silence, could I trust this sudden appearance, this dramatic gesture? And most importantly, was I willing to risk my heart and my child's heart on Alexander Harrington one more time? Rain pelted the narrow hallway behind Alexander, creating a symphony of urgency against the building's metal fire escape. For several heartbeats, we remained frozen, him standing on the threshold of my world, me guarding the entrance, my hand still protectively cradling the swell of our child. May I come in? He finally asked, his voice lacking the assured confidence I remembered. Wordlessly, I stepped aside, my mind racing with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Alexander entered cautiously like a man approaching sacred ground, his eyes taking in the modest apartment, the second-hand furniture, the textbooks stacked on milk crates, the crocheted blanket my grandmother had made draped over our worn couch. So different from the mansion where we'd met, where crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings and priceless art adorned walls. You look beautiful, he said softly, his gaze lingering on my belly. What are you doing here, Alexander? I repeated, crossing my arms. It's been 4 months. He ran a hand through his damp hair, raindrops sliding down his neck. I know, I should have come sooner. You shouldn't have come at all, I countered, even as my traitorous heart leapt at his presence. You made your choice in that boathouse. I made the wrong choice, he said simply, the worst mistake of my life. I laughed bitterly. And now you want what? Forgiveness? A second chance? The ability to dip in and out of your child's life whenever it's convenient for you? I want to be here, he said, his voice gaining strength, every day for both of you. Until your mother makes another threat, until the reality of living without your privilege becomes too difficult. Alexander's jaw tightened. I haven't spoken to my mother since that day, Zora. I walked off that dock and straight to my father's study. I told him everything, how we met, how we fell in love, how his wife tried to buy you off. A flicker of surprise must have shown on my face. My father's many things, but he's not heartless, Alexander continued. He was disappointed, yes, angry about the secrecy, but when I told him I wanted to acknowledge my child to be a real father regardless of the cost, his voice caught. He said he respected my decision even if he couldn't publicly support it. So what happened? Why did it take you 4 months to show up at my door? Alexander moved to the window, watching the rain streak the glass. I had to prove something to myself, to you, and yes, even to my mother, that I could be more than a trust fund, more than a last name. He turned back to me. I got an apartment in Brooklyn, found a job at a startup that doesn't care about my family connections. I've been living on my salary, not my inheritance. I sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. Your mother said you signed the papers, that you agreed to her terms. I never signed anything, he replied firmly. After you left, I told her the deal was off, that I would never deny my child. She lied to me. The realization shouldn't have surprised me, yet somehow it did. She tried to lie to me too, Alexander said, taking a tentative seat beside me. Called the next day claiming you'd taken the money after all, that you'd left New York. My eyes widened, but you didn't believe her. He shook his head. I came to your apartment that night, saw the lights on, knew you were still here. His expression turned pained. But I couldn't bring myself to come up, not until I had something real to offer you, something that wasn't tied to the Harrington name or fortune. So you just, watched from afar, let me think you'd abandoned us. I left letters, he said quietly, 3 of them in your mailbox downstairs. My breath caught. The building's mail system was notoriously unreliable. Packages disappeared, letters were delivered to the wrong apartments. I never received any letters. Alexander's face fell. I thought you were ignoring me, that you'd decided you wanted nothing to do with me. And yet you came tonight anyway, I observed. I saw you yesterday, he admitted. At the farmer's market on 161st, you were buying apples and laughing with some woman. Aisha, my roommate. He nodded. You looked so beautiful, so at peace. I almost walked away again, but then you turned and the sunlight caught your face and I just couldn't stay away any longer. He swallowed hard. Even if you send me away tonight, I needed you to know the truth. The rain had intensified outside, mirroring the storm of emotions within me. Part of me wanted to throw him out to protect myself from the possibility of being hurt again. But another part, perhaps the braver part, wanted to believe him. How do I know this isn't just another moment of weakness? I asked. How do I know you won't run back to your world when this one gets too hard? Because that world isn't mine anymore, he said gently. The past 4 months have taught me what really matters, Zora, not stock portfolios or family legacy, but waking up with purpose, creating something meaningful. His eyes held mine, being worthy of the love I threw away. And your mother's? His expression hardened. She's made her position clear. I'm welcome to return to the fold if I come to my senses. Until then, I'm effectively cut off. So you've given up everything, I whispered. For a child you've never met and a woman who walked away from you. No, he corrected softly. I've given up what never truly belonged to me to fight for what actually matters. A powerful kick from within interrupted us. I gasped, grabbing Alexander's hand instinctively and placing it on my belly. His eyes widened as he felt the movement, the tangible evidence of the life we'd created. Is that? I nodded, unable to speak as I watched wonder transform his face. In that moment, with his hand on my belly and tears gathering in his eyes, the walls I'd built around my heart began to crack. Hello in there, he whispered to my stomach. I'm your dad, I'm sorry I'm late. The simple words unleashed something in me. Tears I'd been holding back for months spilled down my cheeks. You hurt me, Alexander, you let me walk away. I know, he said, his own voice thick with emotion. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you both if you'll let me. I can't just forgive and forget, I said, wiping my eyes. Too much has happened. I'm not asking you to, he replied. I'm asking for a chance to earn back your trust, day by day, step by step. A key turned in the lock and Aisha entered, stopping short when she saw us. Her eyes narrowed as she recognized Alexander. You must be the roommate, Alexander said, rising to his feet. You must be the asshole, she responded coolly. Despite everything, I laughed. Aisha, this is Alexander. Alexander, meet the woman who's been holding me together for the past 4 months. Then I owe you a debt I can never repay, he said sincerely. Aisha's expression remained skeptical. Are you back for good or just visiting your conscience? I hope to be back for good, he answered, looking at me. But that's not my decision to make. Aisha studied him for a long moment, then turned to me. I'm going to Miranda's for the night, call me if you need me. The subtext was clear, call me if you need me to come home and help kick him out. After she left, silence settled between us again. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle patter, the storm passing. I have an ultrasound photo, I offered finally. From last week, do you want to see? His face lit up, more than anything. I retrieved the grainy image from my wallet, watching as he studied it with reverence. The doctor says everything looks perfect, it's a girl. Alexander looked up, eyes shining. A daughter. I nodded, unable to stop my own smile. She's very active, especially at night. Like her father, he said softly, I've always been a night owl. This simple sharing of genetic connection, this acknowledgement of our child as a blend of us both, felt profoundly intimate. I'm still angry with you, I admitted. I still don't know if I can trust you again. That's fair, he acknowledged. I wouldn't trust me either. He carefully handed back the ultrasound. But I'm asking for the chance to prove myself, not as a Harrington, just as Alexander, just as a man who loves you and wants to be a father to his daughter. And if your mother shows up at my door with another check, or threatens worse. His expression turned resolute. Then we face her together, I won't let her dictate our future again. I considered his words, weighing them against the pain of the past months. Against the years of single motherhood I'd been preparing for. I can't promise anything, Alexander, but I'm willing to try for her. I placed my hand on my stomach. She deserves to know her father. Relief washed over his features. That's all I'm asking for, a chance. It won't be easy, I warned. Your world and mine, they're so different. Maybe we create our own world, he suggested, something neither of us has known before, something better. The baby kicked again, as if offering her own opinion. She seems to agree, I said with a small smile. Alexander's hand found mine, his touch tentative, asking permission. I hesitated, then intertwined my fingers with his. One day at a time, I said, that's all I can offer right now. One day at a time, he repeated like a vow. 2 months later, on a snowy January evening, Eleanor Harrington appeared at my apartment. I was alone, Alexander having gone out for my midnight craving of pistachio ice cream. When I opened the door, her expression betrayed her shock at my heavily pregnant state. Ms. Williams, she said stiffly, may I come in? Against my better judgment, I let her enter. She perched uncomfortably on the edge of our couch, looking out of place in her tailored wool coat and pearls. I understand my son has been staying here. He lives here, I corrected. This is his home now. She surveyed the apartment, which had transformed over the past weeks. Alexander's books now filled the shelves alongside mine. A hand-built crib stood in the corner, the result of his weekends spent learning carpentry. Photos of us decorated the walls, evidence of our cautious rebuilding. He's throwing away everything he was raised to be, she said, but the fire had gone out of her accusation. No, I countered gently, he's becoming what he was always meant to be, a man of integrity, a father. Eleanor's composure cracked slightly, he won't return my calls. That's his choice, I said, just as choosing us was his choice. She opened her purse and I tensed, expecting another check. Instead, she withdrew a small velvet box. This belonged to Alexander's grandmother. She would have wanted his child to have it regardless of circumstances. She placed the box on the coffee table between us. I'm not here to approve or disapprove, but he is still my son, and that, she nodded toward my belly, is still my grandchild. Before I could respond, the door opened and Alexander entered carrying a grocery bag. He froze when he saw his mother. What are you doing here? He demanded. Eleanor stood. I came to see if the rumors were true, if you were really living in this, she gestured vaguely. Home, Alexander finished firmly. I'm living in my home with the woman I love and our daughter who will be here any day now. Something shifted in Eleanor's expression, not quite acceptance but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Your father asks about you. He knows where to find me, Alexander replied. My number hasn't changed. Eleanor nodded stiffly. The box is for the baby from your grandmother's collection. She moved toward the door, then paused. The nursery rhymes. Alexander blinked. What? You couldn't sleep as a child without the nursery rhyme book, the one with the blue cover, she said, not meeting his eyes. It might help with the baby. With that cryptic statement, she left, closing the door quietly behind her. Are you okay? I asked Alexander, who stood motionless, ice cream melting in its bag. She came without lawyers, he said wonderingly, without threats. Maybe it's a start, I offered. He set down the groceries and came to me, placing both hands on my rounded belly. Or maybe it's just her realizing she can't control everything, that some things are more powerful than the Harrington name or fortune. Like what? I asked, covering his hands with mine. Like this, he said simply, leaning down to kiss me, like us. 3 days later, in the early hours of a crystal-clear morning, our daughter was born, 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect, screaming life. Alexander wept as he held her for the first time, this man who had walked away from millions to be in this sterile hospital room, wearing faded jeans and a t-shirt stained with my tears and sweat. We named her Maya after my grandmother, Maya Grace Williams Harrington, a bridge between worlds. As Alexander placed her in my arms, I saw in his eyes the same revelation that had slowly grown in me over these months of cautious reconciliation, that sometimes the most valuable things come disguised as impossible choices, that sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted makes room for everything you truly need. That sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the ones most worth fighting for. Thank you for joining Zora, Alexander, and baby Maya on this emotional journey. I hope their story touched your heart as much as it did mine. What did you think of this final chapter? Were you moved by Alexander's transformation? Did Alina's small step toward acceptance surprise you? Subscribe now for more emotional stories that explore love, family, and the choices that define us. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I can't wait to hear from you.